Mm.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me see, please, by way of reaction, how are you? I haven't seen you in a very long time. I hope that you are good. Welcome back. Let me see. Reaction, how are you? How is your day going? How is the semester going so far? I see a few thumbs up, which is good. Are you coping? Are you happy? Okay, well, welcome back. Our lesson today on the safety and care of learners and the role that the teacher plays in keeping our learners safe. Before we start with that, I would like to do two things quickly. The first one is that I have looked at your forum participation and I have graded them. But what bothers me a little bit is there were quite a lot. Sorry, mute, please. Thank you. There were quite a number of students who the system showed didn't participate in the forum, so that worries me a little bit. So if you have indeed participated, but I've missed your participation, maybe I haven't seen it or something, please just let me know by way of WhatsApp. So go to your gradebook, see whether you have marks, and if you don't have marks, but you know that you have posted on the forum, please let me know by sending me a WhatsApp. The other thing is that assessment A has been marked and those marks have been released yesterday. So please go and look at your assessment A feedback from the marker, see how you have done, and that indeed your assessment was marked. I will send you a little video with general feedback, and I will also make the marking guide available to you so that you can see where you went wrong or where you have lost marks maybe. And again, if there is an issue with your assessment A, also please send me a WhatsApp so that we can sort that out. We had a little bit of trouble with Ifundi. We've uploaded the marked assessments 3 times. The first 2 times it didn't pull through any of the marked assignments. I'm not sure why. On the third attempt, it seems that everything is but already one student has let me know that hers was not or doesn't have marks. So please just double check that everything is there, and if there's an issue, just let me know via WhatsApp. Someone's mic is opened. I think it's Nomasontu. Would you please just close your mic? And some still enters. Let me just check with my participants. Okay. So then you have been busy at Will with the schools, and also you have done the activity regarding safety, and you have worked through the safety chapter or the regulations for safety measures, and you have taken photos at the school, which you have shared with us in your beautiful collages that you have posted on the comments on Ifundi. And I really enjoyed this content that you have created. Let me just log in, and I hope that you have also scrolled through those collages on the Commons tool and seen how lovely they are. Many of them have indicated that some schools do indeed take the safety seriously, and they have adhered to regulations regarding to safety. There's a lot about toilets, there's a lot about sanitation, about video cameras and fences and so on. And then there were also some schools who did not adhere to safety regulations, or some safety issues that some of you have identified where learners might not be safe, or where there might be a threat or a risk in how the school handles the learner's safety. So these are just some of the wonderful collages that you have created, and well done. And you have really taken lovely pictures and identified the issues, and you have managed very successfully to bring together the practice of school safety with the law. So well done on that. So let us continue to discuss safety and care of the learners. What I want to do today is I'm going to look at the basis, the legal basis for, or the reasons from the law of why you as a teacher are responsible for the safety and care of learners. We are going to look at the learners' abilities and capacity, legal capacity, and how that affects your responsibility towards them. And then we are going to look at some general safety measures as well as violence in schools. And then for next week, we will handle delictual liability, where we look at if a learner gets hurt at school, if something goes wrong, and the parents decide to sue the school or sue the teacher. How does that work? What are the things that the court will look at? And if we have that knowledge, we will be better able to avoid getting into those situations. Because also, and especially you as foundation phase teachers, you work with small little learners that are not yet very responsible and mature. So you have to be very careful, but also they have so much to learn about the world. And we don't want to keep our learners inside a little cocoon all of the time just because we are scared that they will get hurt. So we want them to sometimes take some risks. There have to be risks taken because that's part of life, and you don't grow if you just stay within one little safe space all of the time. But we'll have to do that in a manner that still is caring and doesn't present an unnecessary risk to the safety of learners. And if we know and understand how the court will look at negligence, then we will be better prepared to provide our learners with learning opportunities and opportunities to experience things without putting ourselves at risk of doing something wrong and getting into trouble about that. So both protecting ourselves as teachers and also promoting the learning experience and the life experiences of the learners because we know what to do. Okay, so that is where we are at today. So first of all, let us just take a look at the duty of the teacher. So the teacher has a duty of care. That is a the common law term, duty of care. Oh, let me just hear, can you see my screen? Can you see the PowerPoint? If you could just give me an indication. Guys? Anyone?
Yes, ma'am, we can see.
Thank you very much, Amy. Did I say that right? Is it Amy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so what I've done on this picture is the gray circle at the bottom depicts the duties involved in the teacher's duty of care. You need to keep learners safe. That is part of the duty of care. Another one is to manage the learner's behavior. So you have to control what they do and what they should and should not do and where they go and so on, which is also very much linked to learner discipline, which we will look at in study unit 4. And then you have to facilitate learning, which is obviously the main aspect of your role as a teacher. So these are the duties that falls on you in terms of your duty as teacher, your role as teacher towards the care and the safety of learners. So in the green blocks, I have what we call the common, oh my goodness, that color doesn't work very well there. Let me just undo that. The common law duty, and if you remember in study unit 1, we have discussed the sources of education law, and common law is one of the sources of education law. Just to remind you, the common law refers to the law that has been developed over time, that we have inherited from the past. It has been developed by the courts and by theorists in the law. And these principles and rules have become part of our modern law and has also been developed and adapted for the modern situation. Some of the principles that are important, I don't know if you have ever heard about in loco parentis, which means in the place of the parent. So whenever the children are under your supervision or in your care, you are in loco parentis, in the place of the parent, and therefore you will have the same rights and the same duties as a parent towards the safety and the care of the child. Also, another principle is because you have control over situations and items or objects or maybe some equipment or maybe vehicles or anything that might pose a risk, because you have control over that and you have control over the situation. You are creating a situation, a sports day or an excursion or a demonstration or an activity. You are in control, and that control that you have places the responsibility on you to make sure that you do not harm or learners do not get harmed in that situation. Then there's also a special relationship of trust between you and your learners. As their teacher, they trust you, they trust, or hopefully trust that you knows best, and they will listen to you, or supposed to listen to you. And that special relationship also places a duty of care on you. And then lastly, the fact that you have a position of authority means that you should control the learner's behavior or manage the learner's behavior and exercise your authority in a caring manner to also keep learners safe physically and emotionally. So this is the common law basis for the educator's duty of care. In the orange blocks, we have the statutory duty. And statutory duty means that there is some things that you are supposed to do which you are told about or instructed about in legislation or statutes. So in our national acts, such as, for example, the Schools Act, provincial acts, regulations, such as the regulations for safety measures, guidelines and norms and standards that we have and policies that we have, all of the legislation have some instructions, some things that it says a teacher must do, and then there are some things that it says a teacher may not do. So those instructions, those statutory duties, also place you in a position where you have to manage the learner's behavior, have to keep them safe, and have to facilitate their learning. And then lastly, in the pink blocks, the basis of the teacher's duty is the rights of the learners. So because if you remember back in study unit 2, we have dealt with human rights, and we said that for every right, a duty is created. So if I have a right to bodily integrity, then you have a right to respect my body and not harm my body. If you have a right to human dignity, I have a right to respect your human dignity and not degrade you or treat you in an inhumane manner. So in these ways, there are also rights that relate very directly to learners' safety. And those rights, the fact that learners have those rights, places a duty on you as an educator to fulfill those rights or to protect and respect those rights at the least. And when we talk about human rights, we never say that it's only the learners who have rights. For this study unit, we focus on the learner, but the teacher has the very same rights as the learner does. So the learner is also responsible to respect your rights as you are theirs. However, you also have additional duties in terms of statutory and common law duties, which makes the situation, the dynamics very different for you. Okay, so one of the rights is section 16, safety and security of the person, being free from violence, not having a right not to be treated in a degrading or inhumane way, and so on. So those rights place a duty on you. The child's right to equality is relevant. The child has to be free from discrimination. Discrimination makes an environment unsafe and also can even constitute a form of emotional violence. And then there's the right to life, which I think is self-explanatory. The right to human dignity. We have to respect learners' dignity and treat them as human beings. Even in foundation phase, when you have very small learners, they are still already human beings. We cannot treat them as though they are objects. Then we also have a right to an environment that is not harmful to our health or well-being. And then, of course, the right to education. And here I would also like to refer you back to study unit 1 when we spoke of security or Geborgenheit, meaning that the child has a need to feel secure, free from worries and fear, in order to be open enough to the world and to the learning opportunities that there are in the world. If a child lives in fear and feels uncertain all the time and worried, that child will not be open to the input and the interactions with the world around them and will miss out on a lot of learning opportunities. So in that way, if the school is not a safe environment for the learner or the classroom is not a safe environment for the learner, that will also negatively affect the learner's right to education. And in all these cases, those rights of the learner places a duty on the teacher to respect those rights so that the learner can be safe. Of course, the same rights of the teacher places a duty on the employer to keep you as a teacher safe. But in this module, we focus more on the learner safety. And then another important aspect to take into account when we talk about the safety of learners is the legal capacity. So you would remember from study unit 2 that we talked about legal subjects, and a child, every person is a legal subject, and a child is also a legal subject. So in our legal system, people are afforded specific legal capacity, things that they can do in the eyes of the law. So in the eyes of the law, we have 3 forms of capacity. The capacity to act, and that refers to the ability to enter into a contract or a legal binding agreement. And then the second one is the capacity to litigate, which means the ability to stand in court, to make a court case, or to be sued. And then the third form is accountability, which means that you are mature and capable to be able to foresee possible outcomes or consequences of your actions, to understand the difference between right and wrong, and those type of things. So that closely, as you can already imagine, relates to a person's age. So we have three forms of legal capacity, which influences how we act towards a child or a learner. A child in South Africa is anyone under the age of 18. The moment you turn 18, you are an adult, which is 18 years older. So if you are an adult, you have full capacity to act, capacity to investigate, and you have full accountability, unless there are some forms of disability which prohibits you from that, but that's another case. And then in your case, as foundation phase teachers, you will probably have one or more of infants, which is 0 to 6 years old, and minors, which is 7 to 17 years old. So you might have a child of 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10, and maybe 5. So you will have these learners in your class, and if the learner is under the age of 7, they are not 7 yet, that learner has no capacity to act. They cannot enter into any legal agreement. They have no capacity to litigate. They cannot make a court case or be sued in a court case, and they have no accountability. They are not mature enough to understand the consequences of their actions. We have to be very diligent. We have to have much more supervision, and we have to give them a lot of guidance in terms of their own behavior. When the child turns 7, the child is now a minor. The child is not a baby anymore. The child is now a minor. And then as the child grows older, their capacity to act and to litigate and their accountability levels will go up with their age. So a child of 17 might be held accountable and might be able to enter into an agreement or a contract. But a child of 7, 8, 9, until the child is about 13, anything under 14, we assume that the child might have capacity and accountability, but that can be refuted or proven correct or incorrect. So there might be cases where we say it's a simple case, it's a very familiar case, the child is 9 years old, the child had these rules over and over and deliberately transgressed the rules and can be held accountable. But in most cases, a child of 7, 8, or 9 has a very, very, very limited accountability, and they don't have capacity to act or to litigate unless with the help of their parents. So this means, or the implications of this for the learner safety would be that you as a teacher will have to take into account the age of the learner, their level of accountability, and provide more diligence, more care, more focus, more supervision, and more guidance for younger children than for children who might be older than 13 or 14. When we look at elements of a safe school, we want a school to be safe and caring and child-friendly. And the elements as defined by UNESCO and the Department of Education is a school like this is rights-based, so it respects the rights of people. It is gender-sensitive and promotes equality. It promotes the health and well-being of learners and everyone else in the school. It has community partnerships, so the school would work together with police, with churches, with NGOs, with parents, with other community members and organizations. And the school must be effective and should offer quality education. If all of these are present, we would say that the school is a safe and a caring, child-friendly school. And the main focus of it all is that it should be conducive to education and training. That's the whole point of it all. What does learner safety involve? It means security of property, the learner's things, their bag, their clothes, their stationery and books should be safe at school. It shouldn't be damaged at school. There should be security of the person, the orange block, both physical and mental. The child should be safe. Their body and their mind should be safe. There should be in the purple block, absence of harassment and bullying. In the red block, there should be well-disciplined behavior. And you will see throughout this discussion today that that learner discipline and learner safety is very closely connected. So I will also refer you to study unit 4, which we will discuss in 2 weeks' time. And then at that time, we will again refer back to safety issues because it's very closely related. A well-disciplined learner will listen when you instruct them in ways that will keep them safe. They will listen and obey when you instruct them not to do something that might put them in danger. And that all enhances the safety of learners and enables you as a teacher to take care of them. And then in the green block, finally, there should be well cared for facilities, furniture, equipment, and toilet facilities. These should be clean and neat. They should be pretty. They should be a nice environment to be in, conducive to a feeling of security and conducive to effective teaching and learning. So I think you can imagine that some of these things not 100% in the control of the teacher. For example, facilities is not 100% in your control. You can keep your class neat and tidy, you can pretty it up, but if there are not enough chairs, you can't really do anything about that. So safety is also a collaboration between the state or the Department of Education, the governing body, the school principal, and the teachers. How can the law contribute to the safety of learners? It is important to note that the law alone cannot address an issue such as safety. Safety has to be addressed holistically. There are aspects of psychology, aspects of emotional intelligence, aspects of finance, aspects of management, and so on. So all of these things have to work together to create a safe space for learners and teachers to work in. But the law can help us in certain ways. And here you will see that these are very much the same as the functions of the law, which we dealt with in study unit 1. The law can create and regulate legal relationships. It can promote legal balance and harmony. It outlines mutual rights and obligations. It provides the security of lawfulness and order. It ensures justice and fairness in education environments, and it protects the rights of people in the education system. So these are the ways in which the law can contribute and help to keep learners safe in the school and to keep teachers safe. We will look at that in study unit 5. So the legal framework, you will find these documents. I've listed the documents that are most relevant. Some of them are education legislation, and some of them are subordinate legislation, some of them are general legislation. And as you have worked through Chapter 8 in Introduction to Education Law, you would have come across mentions of all of these, and in that chapter have quoted some of the relevant sections from these different documents. So you would already have read those. You have worked through Chapter 8 in preparation for the VIL activity. What are the aspects that you as a teacher should be aware of and should take into account? You should look at premises and infrastructure. So again, the state has its responsibilities, the SGB has responsibilities, and you as a teacher has responsibilities. As a teacher, you should keep your learners away from areas which might pose a danger. And if there are something that is broken or poses a hazard, you should report that. The same for sanitation. And then with sanitation, if you have foundation phase learners, they must be supervised when going to the bathroom. You can not send a learner out of the class to go to the bathroom alone unless you have toilets in your class. But if they have to leave your classroom to go to the toilet, they must be accompanied and supervised. So that it helps for the smaller learners to have toilet time where you take the entire class, you go to the ablution, have them use the facilities, make sure everything is fine and safe, and bring them back to your class and make sure everyone is back in the class. We had the case of the child who has fallen into the pit toilet. The teacher was not there. The teacher sent the child alone to the toilet. The child fell in. and the child died, and the teacher didn't even notice the child was missing. So we need to prevent that type of situations. Then with regards to school uniform, also again in sanitation, if there's an issue, something is broken or there's a water leak or something, you should report it. Regarding school uniform, this is important as a safety measure because it helps us to identify which learners in a situation belongs to us or to our school. So this is especially important when we take learners off the school grounds, sports or other extramural activities. Maybe we visit another school, or we go on an excursion. Maybe you go visit a museum, or you go visit the zoo, or whatever the case might be. Your learners should go with a school uniform. Do not let them come in their own clothes. This is very helpful for keeping an eye over them, knowing which learners belong to you, and also if they get lost, you can spot them in terms of their school uniform, or another person can easily identify to which school they belong if that child does get lost. They shouldn't get lost, but it does happen sometimes. The school uniform helps us in that sense. If there's a lot of learners from different schools, if they have their school uniform or a particular uniform, you can identify them easily and keep control over them. And then, of course, control of learner behavior, and we will deal with that extensively in the next study unit when we talk about learner discipline. And I have also touched on it already. And then we have HIV, AIDS, and other contagious outbreaks, such as COVID. Then it is important for you as teacher to know what to do. What do you do when there's blood? What do you do when a child vomits? What do you do when a child has COVID or shows COVID symptoms? And the procedures of sanitizing and social distance and all of that. You have to be aware of the regulations to adhere to them. Another thing is school activities and extramurals. These have to be planned and supervised very, very carefully because they pose a higher risk of danger and possible injury. And transporting learners also. And there are specific regulations with regard to transporting learners. We have to have the permission of the Department of Education, the consent of the parents. We have to check the roadworthiness of the vehicle. We have to check that the vehicle has a fire extinguisher. We have to check the number of children per vehicle. All of those things are very, very carefully regulated to enhance the safety of learners. And we have to be aware of and stick to these regulations. And then coming to school and going home. And in this case, we cannot just say, oh, well, once the school is out, the learner is on his way home or on her way home, and we are not responsible for them. That is unfortunately not how it works. The Department of Education has to take responsibility for the child coming to school and going home because we oblige children to come to school. They don't come out of their free choice. We have forced them, not physically, to come to school. So therefore, we are also responsible for their safety once they leave the school or before they come to school. Safety around the school, managing the traffic around the school, having teachers on the outside of the gates, making sure learners cross the street safely, those type of things. And then also the SGB, together with the principal, the teachers, and the parents, should also discuss and come up with a plan for keeping learners safe if learners have to go home and maybe the parents work long hours and the parents are not there, or maybe they don't have transport and they want to walk and it's unsafe where they walk. Then the school must come up together with the parents and the community with a plan to deal with that and to enhance the safety of learners in coming to school and going home. And then also dangerous objects and hazardous substances. These have to be locked away, stored very safely. Learners, especially your foundation phase learners, should not have access to them. You know, the stuff for gardening and things for doing experiments and cleaning objects, cleaning substances, all of those things, they should be totally out of reach of our little ones. We should keep the little ones safe. And then the last aspect that we need to give attention to is alternative learning spaces. When we take learners out of the normal classroom situation to learn, maybe to a workshop, maybe to a kitchen, maybe outside, maybe to a different venue, then we have to also be very diligent to see that those spaces might pose increased risk or dangers, and we have to deal with that. We have to plan accordingly, and places like workshops and laboratories and kitchens have additional special requirements for safety, such as fire extinguishers and clothing, protective clothing, and so on. And we need to also take that into account. When you do activities with your learners, you should plan your day and you should plan activities. Careful planning helps us to avoid crisis. So when you plan, take into account the age and the legal status of your learner, as I have explained earlier. The smaller they are, the more diligent you need to be, and the better your planning has to be, and your control and your guidance of the learners. The nature of the activities, ask yourself, what does the activity create a risk, and what measures should I have in place to prevent injury or harm? That doesn't mean that you may never put children at risk. We do need to have some form of risk. We cannot have children in cocoons and have them sit still in a place where they are absolutely 100% safe, because that is not conducive to learning. They have to learn about life, and to learn about life, they have to do life. They have to play. They have to maybe make a fruit salad. They have to cut out a picture with scissors. So they have to sometimes engage in activities that might pose a risk, but you as a teacher should plan those activities very carefully and control the behavior of the learners while they are doing those activities. So the greater the risk, the greater the care you have to take. But don't avoid risk at all. That is not very educationally sound. Then also the nature of your relationship with the learners. I think in VIL you would have experienced that you don't from the very first day have a particular understanding between you and learners. It takes a little bit of time to build a relationship of trust. So there would be certain risks that you could take later on in a year when the learners are very used to them and you and the learners have a very good understanding. Whereas at the very beginning, when the learners are still getting to know you and you are still getting to know them, you might want to take less risks. Also take into account the place where you do activities. If you go to a sports field, to a museum, to a mall, or wherever you go, what type of place is it? What are the risks there? And how can you safeguard learners despite that risk? How often does the activity take place? If children are used to doing something again and again and again, they do this often. They know what to do, they know what you expect of them, and you don't have to be that very much worried about them. But if it's a new activity, they are not used to it, or they are outside of their normal routine or their normal space, you need to be much more careful and plan very well. So if an activity is for long, so if you go out for an entire day, you will have to plan very well, because they will get tired, they will get hungry, they will get thirsty, they will need the toilet, they might want to sit down and rest for a bit. So you have to plan for all these things. If you're just going out for half an hour, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're going out for 3 or 4 or 5 hours, you will have to plan accordingly. And then lastly, we should promote our learners' competencies. They should learn new values, new knowledge, and new skills with all the activities that we do with them, even during play, because play is also important. All right, so you have worked with regulations for safety measures. You did the VIL activity. I just want to do one exercise with you. So please get your statutes and then answer question 1. You only need to identify which section is relevant for this statement. So if you could do that quickly, let us take 2 or 3 minutes and see. If you go to the regulations for safety measures, it should be around about page 80 or so. Let me see. In statutes, more or less page 82. And see if you can quickly identify section number that we should write into this open space. And this is where you will need to remember how we quoted from legislation. In this case, you only need to write the number of the relevant section and subsection. Could you find it? Let me hear from you. What did you find? Anyone?
Ma'am, we found in section 8 on page 85 that it says parents have the right to visit the public school where their children have been admitted, but such visits may not disrupt any of the school activities.
Perfect. So you will write, according to section 8, bracket 1, close bracket of the regulations. Oh, now what have I done? Excuse. There they are. Okay. So that is how you will write it. And then I have made the PowerPoint available under the syllabus on Ifundi, so you can continue to answer question 2, 3, and 4 on your own afterwards. You have already done work with regulations in in the VIL activity as well as in study unit 1. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I want to move on to dealing with violence. And I want us to have a quick discussion. So let me just see how many participants do we have. We are 29. So how it's going to work is I'm going to create breakaway rooms where you will be in groups of 4 or 5. And then what I want you to do is everyone open your mic and your camera, and as quickly as you can, in a couple of minutes, make a list of forms of violence that you have seen or experienced during VIL or when you were still at school. If you can make it relevant to foundation phase, even better. And then name possible causes of violence. So let us see how quickly you can list forms of violence and possible causes of violence. I'm going to give you 8 minutes. When you come into your breakaway room, please let the eldest person, so quickly just give your month of birth and your year, and then choose the person who is the oldest in the group will be the group leader. Write down the list as you discuss this, and when we come back into the main room, quickly post your list into the chat, so then we can have a quick discussion on that. Is that clear? Any questions? Are you all good? All right, so I'm going to create 6 rooms. I think that should be fine. And then I will see you on the other side.
Hello, everyone else. Can you hear me? Okay, good. So I think you are the oldest between those of us who have stated their ages. So can you maybe be our group leader?
Yes.
then Khotso, you will make the list as everyone just opens up the cameras and their mics and just list whatever forms of violence and whatever causes of violence in schools you can think of. Maybe something that happened at the school where you were, or maybe something that you've read about or heard about.
Okay, ma'am.
And then just don't put the comments in the chat now, because then it will stay in your room and it won't come to the main room. So just keep them, write them down or something, and then come and type them in the main room's chat.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello, guys. As you've heard, like, what are the
They should have likes or stuff like that, because it just shows the other kids that are less fortunate what they could have.
Yeah.
Yes, and I also want to add to that. I don't think it maybe comes always from us. I just realized as I'm watching some kids and they're watching TV, and a lot of the shows are very violent a lot of the times, and I think they see that as well. So maybe they have good parents, but it doesn't necessarily mean the parents taught them that. It could come from what they are watching on TV or seeing on social media, because kids these days have phones in their hands very early on, actually.
Yeah.
That's true.
Jenna, we didn't discuss that yet, but will you write that in the chat later on?
Sure, I can write it down.
Okay, thank you.
So did you already know that she was the eldest or what?
No, I just started
I'm
talking.
very confused with the way everyone is. I'm not seeing everyone, and so I'm just a little confused.
That's fine. If you all agree, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Ma'am, we are nervous now.
Let me leave you in peace. You just continue. Hi, everyone. Your mics are closed. How are you doing the discussion? Hello, are you there?
Hello, ma'am.
Hi. So have you been doing the discussion?
I've been trying to talk, but everyone's mic is off, so I decided to turn off my mic as
Shine.
well.
Kiamugetsi and Sekopolu and Rauchepa, where are you? Are you even there? Please talk to us. I don't want to talk
Doesn't
to
seem
us.
so.
Or maybe they joined the class and they are just left their computers. Okay, fine. So you can just continue and make a list. If you wanna run some ideas by me, what were the most striking things that you would have seen during your VIL? Did you see any violence among your learners or not?
Ma'am, there was this child. The teacher told me that he has ADHD, so he used to like hit the other children out of nowhere. That was so traumatizing.
Sure. Yeah, that is very difficult
Because he
to
has
deal with.
so much energy. He has so much energy, and you can't keep control of him. When he starts getting those things, he can't stop.
So he gets aggravated and can't soothe himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's both a form of violence and a cause of violence then. Something that you can mention in the chat when we return.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so I will leave you. Let me quickly join the other groups to see that they are fine, and in a couple of minutes we will return to the main room. If you
ma'am.
want, you could always leave this room and I can assign you to another room.
That's okay.
Okay.
Learners just take it too far. So what other forms of violence can we see? So we have the play fighting, which turns violent quickly, the hair pulling, the pinching, the emotional violence, and then we also had the punching of the window that I witnessed.
And don't remember to also list some causes. What do you think causes violence? What would be the reasons why children act in this way?
So I know from the punching the window that the grade R girl did in my situation, she was put into timeout because she was throwing acorns at other learners as a joke. And then she got very angry and frustrated, and then she just punched the like a playhouse window, and it broke. And she also hurt her fist.
Wow. Sure. So it could be, what do you think, a combination of what? Anger or a lack of ability to manage anger, and maybe something else?
She definitely had a lack of discipline at home, which led to this. And then she has no ability to control her emotions. So any slight inconvenience would be a great issue for her.
Oh, that's very difficult.
Yeah, no, it was rough.
Shame. Okay, you can continue. We'll have a couple of minutes. Let's take 2 more minutes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Just oh
Hi.
I
Sorry,
think
it's just me dropping in.
oh
You can continue.
okay. I've also felt like the children in the school are not taught enough about just being gender neutral, that everybody can do everything, everyone is included, or everyone is supposed to be inclusive in every single activity. Rugby is not just for boys, and things like dolls and pink is not for girls only, so that's my take on that.
Wow, this is an interesting discussion. What was the thing that you were the point that you were making there? Is that what we should not do?
So we spoke about the different kinds of violence that we experienced while we're doing our practicals. So I felt that bullying was a form. So one of the children bullied the other child, and they said to them, oh, wait. Okay, so then the one child was very sporty. She loved soccer. She was interested in soccer. She used to play with the boys because the boys always had the soccer ball. So then the one girl in the class said to her, why don't you just wear pants because you're a boy? So yeah, that was
No,
I felt
gender-based.
like yes.
Okay, so I see where you're coming from. That's very interesting and very important for us to take into consideration when we discuss violence.
Yes.
Okay, we have about 1 minute left, so I'm going to leave you in peace.
Right, thank you.
Guys, can we say that corporal punishment also falls under that the teachers uses on the kids? Like that's what I usually saw. That's what they used all the time, was corporal punishment. Can we say that it also falls under a form of violence against the kids?
Yeah, definitely. Because, Xavier, when we used to take the children to the bathroom, the teachers would actually stand with their rulers or a stick in order to discipline the children.
Okay, welcome back to the main room, everyone. So with group leaders, please quickly post your lists in the chat to everyone, and then we can quickly see your feedback and discuss those. I see that Nomasontu has posted about an incident where the older learners would bully the younger learners for their lunch boxes and pocket money. That is so very unfair. So I will see in the chat what you have discussed, the forms of violence and the causes of violence, which you have discussed in your groups. Thank you, Komotsu. She was the first one to post. She said violence, a boy in the class hits all the other learners, and that the possible cause is ADHD. And then there were also groups of learners fighting, which the possible cause or the cause was gang violence. Okay. Komotsu, was this in foundation phase or was it older learners in the same school?
Ma'am, the ADHD boy was in the foundation phase class, and then the boys fighting were older learners in the school.
Was it a combination school or just a primary school?
Just the primary school.
Oh, wow. So even grade 7 and grade 6 learners are part of gangs. And then Enderforth said outbursts and tantrums, and that I can imagine very well, especially for foundation phase learners. They are still very immature. They still lack emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills and also emotional skills. So that is something that as a foundation phase teacher, we have to give a lot of attention to. We have to incorporate in our lessons, in our interactions with learners, in our activities. We need to incorporate opportunities for learners to learn about managing their own emotions. Let me see. Okay, and then Jenna posted verbal abuse, physical, emotional, and psychological abuse. These all could stem from home and the child's socioeconomic background. Okay, and then violence could come from being observed at home, as well as TV shows, games, and social media. Yeah, that could be where it becomes normal in the child's environment or on the TV. It becomes normal for people to act violently, and then the child just thinks, okay, so this is just a fine way to act. And then Jenna and her group further said that where were we? From parents being in denial, for example, not accepting that they may be autistic or having a learning disability. So this is also quite a big problem. If learners have learning barriers or other issues, which is undiagnosed and untreated, then that makes it very difficult. And that is where the parent should be a partner with the school. And I'm sure that in education psychology that you have also, or if not yet, you will still learn how to deal with those type of situations. So there's also autism and Asperger's, making it very difficult to manage the child. And we have to have very special ways of dealing with such children. And then we have Tsepo, who said gender-based violence is a big problem, okay, and corporal punishment, sure, all right, even 30 years after it was abolished. And then Anesh, their group said physical violence. A 5-year-old broke a window with her fist during playtime because she was put in time out. I also saw lots of hair pulling and pinching from learners when they were playing, often because the other learners did not want to share toys. Okay, so again, this is inability to deal with their own emotion. And then there was emotional violence. The incident that I had in school was emotional violence. This one learner kept telling this one girl that she smells and that she wears dirty clothes to school. Oh, so that's actually a form of bullying. I believe the cause in my incident was jealousy, because the girl always done her work and she always kept quiet in class. Okay, wow, good observation there. Learners would play fight and actually end up hurting one another, and this happened amongst both boys and girls. So they don't realize that they hurt one another, or do they lose control maybe? Causes, I believe that children act out what they might have seen somewhere, either at home or within the community. Financial violence, oh, that's an interesting one. The incident I had during my practicals in school was bullying grade 5 learners used to go to the grade 2 learners. Oh, it's that one. And to steal their lunch boxes and pocket money. Yeah, this is also a very big, this was like the oldest form of bullying, give me your food. And then Khotso posted, one of the group members mentioned that there was no violence that occurred during her VIL experiences. Only anger issues amongst the learners was observed. The other one mentioned that in grade 2, 2 boys fought physically because of the use of vulgar language towards one another, and that during school staff meetings at school, that is when the fights take place. So there were not sufficient supervision then. Okay. Yeah, oftentimes children will act as children do, especially when adults are not present. So children do need to be supervised. Is there anyone who would like to comment on any of these, or want to add something, or something particularly that we've missed or that you would like to add? Are you all happy? And thank you very much for participating in this discussion and adding all these comments for us to understand better how violence appears in the schools today. And when you can go and compare to my PowerPoint and also to chapter 8 of the textbook, the different forms of violence. Most of them, you have mentioned a lot of them. And then the different causes of violence I've also listed here on the PowerPoint, which I've made available for you in the syllabus tool on eFundi. And you can just easily go and compare that. And please take note of the difference between bullying and teasing. This is also part of the lesson page on eFundi, so probably you have seen that already. And then before we go, I just want to highlight for you the school-based strategies for dealing with violence. And again, like discipline, like safety, like most larger issues in the school court, so I will be with you just now. With most larger problems or issues or things in the school, we need a holistic approach. So we cannot approach this only with law. We need to approach it with psychology, with philosophy, with law, with management, with finance, and everything must work together. Kosi, you may ask.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
I experienced some form of violence. I forgot to mention.
Okay, let us hear.
Yeah, there was this learner. It's a female, and then I remember she was walking down the stairs at school, and then there's this boy who came and looked at her and said to her, she can't wait to have hair on bed, something like that. And then that learner was so disturbed. She even wanted to cry because she didn't know what to do. That was some form of sexual thing. I don't know how to call it.
Yeah, sexual harassment, definitely. How old were these learners, more or less?
They are in grade 9.
Oh, so they are older learners.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so especially among the teenagers, sexual harassment usually becomes a problem. Often learners don't quite understand when does flirting end and when does flirting turn into harassment, because there's a difference. And I've also added for you, let me just share my PowerPoint screen. I've also shared for you the difference between flirting and harassment for those students who will work with older learners. As long as both parties enjoy it, you can call it flirting. But the moment that's one-sided and unwanted for one of the parties, then it's not flirting anymore. Then it becomes unpleasant and it's harassment. Especially if someone asks you to stop and you do it again, or if it's clearly explained in the code of conduct for learners and there's a transgression of that, then it's definitely harassment. Okay, so let me quickly run through my diagram here. On the outer side, encompassing everything, is the human rights culture and morality. We need to have a culture in our classrooms, a culture in the school, a culture in the environment, in the community, in the country, which unfortunately we don't have. But we can try, at least in our own classroom and hopefully in the school, to have a human rights culture and an internalization of the values that help us respect other people and respect their rights. Then very important also is education and awareness. We have to educate our learners how to respect people, how to act and behave towards others, how to treat others, how to manage your own emotions, what to do if you feel angry, what to do if you feel jealous, what to do, how to identify what you are feeling. All of those type of things can be included in education and awareness. What is bullying? What should you do when someone bullies you? What is harassment? What should you do when someone harasses you? And then at the same time, we have the school policies and practices where the code of conduct lists clearly what types of misconduct, what forms of violence, what forms of bullying, what forms of harassment, and what the results or the consequences of those might be. There must be a designated contact person and complaints procedures described in the school policies. The school policies must explain how investigation and disciplinary procedures will take place. And there should be restoration and correction. We don't just want to punish learners, because we're not in the business of punishment when we are at school. We are in education. We are in the business of correcting and restoring, making them better, helping them become better. And especially in the cases which you have mentioned of disabilities or mental challenges, maybe academic challenges, and physical disabilities also. All of those definitely needs restoration and correction, where we have to work with the parents, with a social worker, with a school psychologist to get that child the help that they need and to arrive at a plan. How can we best manage that child without excluding that child, but also while also still managing that child in such a way that teaching and learning can continue in the class, that one child doesn't disrupt the teaching and learning for 20 or 30 other learners. And then finally, we do also have to have a record-keeping policy for the school, and everyone has to know when something happens, where to record and report it, and how it should be recorded. All right, so that is all about the human rights culture, the education and awareness, and the school policies and practices will help us to deal with violence in the school. And you can read more about that in chapter 8 of the textbook. For now, I would like to just say that for next week, please read through chapter 6 of introduction, because then we are going to do a scenario or two where something happens at the school and a learner gets hurt, and we are going to pretend that we are the judges, and we are going to use that scenario and look at how a court would have analyzed that scenario and whether or not the teacher and the school will be found negligent and held liable in certain situations. Okay, before we go, do you have any questions for me? Are you all happy? All right, thank you so much for joining me. If there are no questions, then you may leave, and I will see you next week. Have a good week.
Bye bye, have a good week.
Have a
Dankie.
good week too, ma'am.
Dankie. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye, ma'am.
Bye.